Hey everyone. Welcome to the Power Rangers Cosmic Fury spoilers panel. We're going to tell you all the stuff that they weren't allowed to tell you. I was trying to
What
think
is Cosmic Fury really?
It's like a Dino Fury, but in space now.
I'm here
think.
for that.
I don't know.
Are you saying that there are Power Rangers in space?
That sounds insane. It will never work.
Ooh. Do they ever count down to destruction?
Only once. Well, technically, I guess twice.
We did reboot the universe.
So maybe 3 times. Hi guys, this is a Boom Comics panel.
Sort of.
We
But
don't really know what we're doing, so
This is the unofficial Boom.
Yeah,
It's
none of us.
Unofficial, yeah.
None of us work for Boom, so we're the ones who made the comics that Boom published. That hopefully I see a Lord Draken here in the second row. Hopefully you all have enjoyed for these last 6 years. Let's just introduce ourselves.
yeah. So I'm Michael. I'm moderating. Kyle Higgins.
Yep.
Wave. You wrote Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 0 to 20.
0 to 30 plus some annuals, Shattered Grid 1 finale special, and then co-wrote some
shorts
stuff
and
with
some other
Ryan, some
stuff.
shorts, and the Soul of the Dragon original graphic novel.
We have Melissa Flores, who is the incoming writer of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers book, starting at issue 101.
But I also, I was with Saban Brands for 10 years, so I was actually around as a development executive for both Ryan and Kyle's run. I should also say, Matt also has written for Power Rangers.
Michael.
Already has.
Michael,
That's
so
fine. It's been a
sorry.
long weekend.
I'm very tired. I know that. Michael has written for Power Rangers
He
as
has.
well,
Pages of
and
one
he
thing.
has Ranger Danger, that amazing podcast project, and Boom Room, right?
Yes,
So
thank you.
Matt and Michael have been unsung heroes of these comics for many years.
And we also have Ryan Parrott, who wrote everything in between these two.
marathon run it all.
All
yeah.
the other stuff.
Save for Marguerite Bennett.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah,
I'm also Marguerite Bennett.
yeah, surprise.
So why don't we start sort of beginning early days? What was it like in that first sort of year of the book? Like, Go-Go just got started. Kyle, you were
Yeah.
building your stuff together.
Yeah.
Obviously, you were there behind the scenes. What was that time like?
I would say one of the things that was it was the first time that I've been fortunate enough to have a job where you had latitude to figure out what the book was, while also at the same time having a clear vision for what it could be, and having the support to make it mostly that. And so in those early issues, we were finding our way, and we were all figuring out how to work together, what the approvals process was like, if the kids could hate Mondays or not. It's a very inside baseball reference. But there was a lot of that, while also figuring out with Hendry Preseccia, like, what is the look of this series? And then ultimately, Dan Mora coming on to Go-Go, which had a huge influence, and then Daniele De Nicolo later, who really, in my mind, defines the Boom Studio comic look, at least for when I think of my time doing Power Rangers. So we knew going in we didn't want to do a 90s nostalgia series, but that also meant being very careful and figuring out a way to thread the needle where, like, if you squint, things fit, but we're doing a remix. And as a lot of that early stuff was all just kind of figuring out how to kind of trust each other and shape this thing, because I think it had a bigger response when it was announced and ultimately started coming out than really any of us probably anticipated.
Yeah, what I will say is I give both Ryan and Kyle a lot of credit and for their patience with Saban Brands and myself, because up until this time, we had not done comics like the Boom Studio comics. The comics that we had done, while very fun and absolutely enjoyable, were more geared for young kids. And this was the first time that somebody like Boom Studios took on the license and said, no, we're going to go bigger. We're going to be more epic. We're going to tell this story for an older fan. And I mean, myself, I loved comics. I read them, but I had never been in the comics process. And as a brand, we have to be careful when it comes to even just how the suits look like, everything, because we have very loyal, but also very knowledgeable fans, which I'm sure you all know. And so if you miss like a stripe, or if somebody's wearing a skirt and it doesn't have a point, like we hear about that stuff. And so the approvals process was, I think, also, an adjustment and training period for us. And so a credit to the two writers and to Boom Studios for having the patience to like walk us through this process while we asked for 1,000 revisions and while we questioned everything that everybody ever did. Because it took us a minute to get to, I don't want to say get to your level, but kind of in that, like, we're like, okay, to truly understand what they were trying to do. And I think once we figured it out, we were like, all lights are on, let's go.
The cool thing about that period in particular, when Saban still owned the brand, was the team was so small. It was you and Brian Casentini, Edgar Paston, is that last name?
Edgar, Jason, Paul.
Yeah, but it really was like we were getting notes from you and from Brian. And so like when you guys came around and you were so malleable to it, that was what the other thing that was so cool. I'll never forget, they did a big gallery event in Los Angeles for the issue number 0 launch, Gallery Nucleus, and they had all these amazing like premier prestige prints done on canvas of a bunch of the covers from issue 0, because we had like something crazy, like 30 or 35 covers on that, maybe more on that first issue. And so I was signing during the kind of evening, and that was the first time I met Brian. He came over and he just read the script to issue number 2, which was Billy and Trini in the cockpit of the Dragonzord, like, which is underwater, having basically this just very real conversation about, like, I think it was about fears and what Billy's kind of, you can tell there's stuff going on under the surface, and then learn later he like stays morphed all the time because he dematerializes the helmet and the gloves, but he stays morphed because he's still afraid. And Brian was like, we read it and we just went, well, he's just writing people. He's writing them as people. And it was this,
you did a very good Brian, by the way.
And he was just so enthusiastic about the idea of really exploring the potential of what Power Rangers could be, playing to the strengths of the medium that we were working in. And in the medium of comics, you can do anything. There's no pre-existing footage you have to take into consideration. There's no budget limitations. So I was a big proponent from day one of trying to build the Power Ranger book that I always wished the show did more of, but understood why it didn't. But really trying to, again, build like the promise of what Power Rangers could be.
And what was really cool about that too is like while you were building Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, like the idea of a second book came about, and we again, learning curve for us. We were just like, well, how do you have 2 books and not cannibalize your audience? Like, what is the way in? And thankfully, I mean, Boom and Davna had found the perfect person to bring that on, which was Brian with Go-Go.
Yeah, I'm going to rewind 6 years. I'm homesick, and I don't want to go out. And Kyle calls me. He's like, hey, man, we're at a bar in Santa Monica. It's a rooftop bar. Come out. And I was like, I don't want to. He's like, come out. So I was like, all right, fine. I drag myself out of bed. I drive all the way down there. And as I'm going upstairs up to the bar, he's leaving. So I was like, oh, hey, man. He's like, oh, we're done. We're gone. He's like, you sure got here? I was like, I'm 45 minutes away. And so I was like, let me walk you outside. So we walk outside, and I'm going out there, and he's like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this Power Ranger comic book. And I was like, really? Power Rangers is a comic book? Is that going to work? Like, not knowing where my life would go. And then he proceeded to pitch me as you can tell, Kyle will tell you the entire run. And he told me the entire run he was going to do for the first year. So much, in fact, that when I went back to my car, I had a ticket. So thank you. Right. You still owe me money for that.
That's technically a write-off.
That's technically a write-off, yes.
Yeah.
But that was the day that I was like, wow, this could be a really interesting thing. I have no idea if I'll ever be a part of it, but that's really cool.
Well, that was the super neat thing to me. Like, so I've told this story before, but in like 2012, I was doing Nightwing as a part of the New 52, and Bryce Carlson, who I'm not sure what his title is at Boom anymore.
It's like VP,
somebody important. Bryce was an assistant editor at the time at Boom, and we went to college together, and so we were like G-chatting one day just about licensed stuff and stuff Boom was doing, and I said, you know what you guys should go get the license for is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Because I had started doing conventions tied to the New 52 launch and just meeting so many amazing fans who were still passionate about Power Rangers. And I still had a passing familiarity with it from like, late night, like whatever happened to YouTube kind of searches. And Bryce said, it's funny you say that because we've been talking about something like that. And I said, because you could do it, you could make it a really cool book. Like, you could make it a teenager superhero book. You could make a really hip X-Men series type, series with Power Rangers. And so then, nothing really came from it. And I think it was Paper Cuts announced they had the license. So I figured, okay, that, it didn't end up happening. And fast forward, like, it was like 4 or 5 years later, and I'm walking down the street in Los Angeles, and Newsarama puts out the press release that Boom has partnered with Saban and has the license to do the Power Ranger comics. And the first images they put out with that press release were the 5 Goni Montez helmet covers, where they're holding it like that, and they look like sleek, brand new, shiny cars, And they just look so stylish. And I stopped and I was like, that's the book. That's the book. And I emailed Bryce on the spot and I said, who do I have to kill to write a pitch for a backup? Because I figured they already had their creative team locked in. And Bryce wrote back and I said, hopefully not you because you're the only one I know.
Yeah. He's like, you have to kill these 3 people.
And I did it willingly. No.
This is how comics work.
It's very Highlander-esque, actually.
Yeah.
But fortunately, he said they were still looking for the creative team, and that my name had come up, and I was coming off of Nightwing and Batman Beyond 2.0, and I was doing Cowl, and he said, I said, well, yeah, but he remembered our conversation from back in 2012, and so we put together the pitch for the book we had always hoped we could see, and and then I'm talking way too much, and then
No.
Dude, when you came on, especially at the launch of Go-Go and like building that out, I always joked to Daphne that she had miscast us because Ryan and I have been like best friends since college, and it was a coincidence we both ended up on these books together.
No one believes that, by the way.
She thought we were at San Diego, and she would always give me a hard time because I know a lot of people, I know a lot of artists, a lot of writers from doing
Kyle
conventions
knows
for years.
everybody.
And so Daphne and I are walking in San Diego, and we're heading back to the bar after a meeting. And she's like, "Oh, I have another meeting. I gotta take." And I said, "Oh, with who?" And she's like, possibly for the new book. I was like, "Oh, with who?" She's like, "You don't know everyone, Kyle." And I said, "Who is it? Who is it?" And she goes, "Ryan Parrott." I said, "He's my best friend." And she's like, "No, he's not."
That's actually true. That's awesome.
But Ryan has more good, huge ideas in an elevator than I have in a year. And so to do the high school book was always so entertaining to me that's how it started, because it was such a role reversal.
So let's go sort of year 2 then of the books, Ryan, your first year, all built up to the comics' first big event. Melissa, I would love to hear from you first. These guys come to, I think, the Saban officers at the time, and they say to you, "We want to kill Tommy Oliver, and then here's another 12 issues worth of stuff." Like, that's not the end, that's the beginning. What was that like for you
I
guys?
remember that meeting. That was a very long meeting.
4-hour meeting. It was a 4-hour meeting.
But here's the thing. By that time, I'd like to think we were a little more savvy, but more than
It started
that,
with, you can't do any of this.
Yeah. We had done like a year of Power Rangers with Kyle, and like the trust had been built at that point. And also I think Kyle had also become patient enough to know, like, okay, they're gonna need to be walked through this very slowly. It's like we're going to Power Ranger kindergarten.
Well, we pitched this a year in advance for that reason.
Yeah,
You know?
and it was one of those things where because here's the thing, like because we love these books so much, we had more eyes on them. Because we wanted these books to be considered canon, we wanted to be very careful. Because even though the books technically are in their own canon, because obviously, they don't take place in the 90s, everybody has cell phones, different kind of story. Rita is, much younger. We want the books to reflect the timeline of the series. And that's something that actually we struggled with, because it takes away a lot of creativities for the writers who kind of want to do their own thing, but also like it's also a challenge for us. But I think it also, I mean, fans really enjoyed the fact that you got to see the real story of how Goldar was recruited and how, you know, Rita found all her people, and, you know, this missing story between, you know, the time that Tommy joined the team and, you know, the time he became the White Ranger. And so they came in and said, we want to kill Tommy. And I think it was one of those moments where we're just like, huh, okay. I mean, I will say, like, it was a struggle. That first page that where Daniele had Dracon stabbing him.
Oh, the Jeff Johns special?
Yeah. It was much harder.
out.
It was like he stabbed him, and then there was like blood, and like the blade was coming out, and like I remember Brian took one look. I was like, no,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay. So we had to like get it redrawn, but it was one of those things where we're trying to find the pitch. But honestly, we wanted a cool 25th anniversary event. We wanted to pull out all the stops, and when we asked them to come up with one, I mean, they hit it out of the park. Like, what? I can't think of anything better.
So Kyle and Ryan, on your end, what do you remember about putting that whole thing together? Like, how did it come to you straight away? Did you know what it was, or were there drafts and drafts and drafts and versions before you got to what it ended up being?
Kyle already had like the basic structure of it, I think, before I even was involved. Because there was some debate whether or not Go-Go was going to be a part of it. I can't believe we think that now. Where we're like, no, why would we do that? A crossover event with Power Ranger comics?
Well,
Why?
there was always a conversation though you and I would have about like, you remember sitting in coffee shops like right out of college talking about like Image Comics crossovers and of different superhero events in the 90s and early 2000s. It's just like, wouldn't it be cool to do that one day, you know? And
But on the flip side of that, I remember being like, I always hate those crossovers when they come in and you like where the story's going, and then the crossover, everybody has to stop and go do their own things, and there's like, oh hey, you know, like we all got to go fight with Thor, and so I was like, let's not do that.
I mean, that was the thing that it took a long time to figure out was the mechanism to make it work. Yeah. And honestly, Matt Groom and Michael here behind the scenes, you know, we did the Ranger Danger Boom Room every month for each issue. And, you know, it's probably not a surprise when you see like all the stuff we're doing now with our own line of books, the Massive Verse at Image with Radiant Black and Rogue Sun and all that, and the Dead Lucky. It's probably no surprise to hear like we started working together very early on.
Oh, that was the first spreadsheet I ever made for you, Kyle.
Yeah, Michael
I make so many for you now.
Michael built out the spreadsheet with me of every Power Ranger over 25 years.
Can I have that, by the way?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just learned how Shattered Grid worked at the panel yesterday. I just learned how it works. So thank you.
And it was conversations with Matt where we came up with think of it as a pane of glass, and one crack is not gonna destroy it, but it fractures it. So I could create all these. I wanted to create pocket universes so that every era could be present. The issue was originally. The thinking was like, well, each season is an alternate universe, right? But this is the difference between writing the story when I wrote it versus if even probably a few years earlier had I been like doing my DC stuff. Sometimes you tend to spot where where ideas are gonna give you problems down the line much quicker after you've made the mistake and gotten completely screwed by one of your own choices. And so I was looking at that and going, no matter how much work I do, no matter how good this is and the interactions are, everyone's going to feel like they're not the actual characters of the season that we know and love that is appearing, right? They're alternate universe versions, and then it kills your stakes. And so I was determined to figure out a way for every season over 25 years of One Earth to exist at once, while also having the Draken world, which was a different universe by design, also at play. And so the idea, it was almost like a string theory concept of all these universes being on this proverbial kind of pane of glass, and when you break it, it fractures, and the grid fractures it to protect itself. but then causality is kind of thrown out.
I do remember you explaining it to me though, because you were like, okay, so it's going to be all these different realities, and like, but aren't some in the future? Yeah, they're their own separate
Yes.
futures. And I go, so how's Go-Go going to fit in? Because that's in the thing. It's like we're going to do time travel too. And I was like, my brain hurts, man.
But the
I
time
don't
travel,
even understand what's going on.
The time travel happens before everything shatters, and
I still don't understand it, but,
Yeah.
but we got it done.
We'll have a conversation after the panel,
Yeah.
Ryan.
You
I'll
should
walk
have been in
through
the
it.
room when
Walk me through
Marguerite
it
was
after this.
explaining the Solar Ranger world and how that was cut off in
Oh,
Morphin
yeah.
Grid. That was
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, she had a whole whiteboard.
I like the pretty colors.
when the first issue came out, was anyone here at WonderCon, at the WonderCon panel where we gave out issue 25? Yeah, here? Yeah.
Hey, thank you.
That was an incredible experience for all of us. And the reason I mention it is because when there was a printing delay because of the poly bags, and so suddenly the issue was not going to come out 3 days before the massive WonderCon panel we'd all been promoting. It was going to come out 4 days later. So the book wouldn't be out yet. And
It's hard to have a panel when no one's read the book and you can't talk about it.
yeah. And so it was Arun Singh's idea to turn that into a feature rather than a bug and give out the issue to everyone in the room with a really cool variant cover only available there. And then we gave the room like 10 minutes to read it live. And so it was like 1,000 people in this
The best
place.
part
It
was
was
watching who
huge,
reads
yeah.
really fast. Like you're like 1,000 people all reading at the same speed. There was like one guy in the third row starts crying and like staring up
And
at
then
us. like,
someone
"How
else is
dare
going,
you?"
no. And then someone else is, and everyone, there's like
was
this
fun.
visible like reaction and a lot of, right?
It felt like
And-
we were at our own execution because we were just sitting here watching.
And it was this order.
Yeah.
We were next to each other like this, and I turned to Ryan and I went, "I'm really glad we took that sword out of his chest."
Speaking of Shattered Grid and big audience reactions, this is also, minus Matt, who can't be here, the panel that put together Shattered Grid Live 4
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
I
How many of you were here for Shattered Grid Live or have seen it? The video. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, that's a me, Matt, and Michael special. And we put that together when we realized, I think it was you that pointed out, like, hey, most of the cast of like the main bits of the book, like the scenes that you'd want to see or hear performed, they're going to be at the show. And at that time, I was friendly with a number of the actors just from doing conventions with them and having the new book and everything. And I was working with Jason David Frank on we did the Shattered Grid short film and whatnot. And so we put together like, well, what if we treat this as a live experience? And we got high-res artwork and stripped the balloons out, and Michael timed everything. I had Ron Wasserman come in and do an all-new music remix. And it just, I mean, I don't know why. I mean, we just what was it?
Because
We
I
just-
wanted to see it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like truly the reason that I pitched it to you was like, I think this would be cool. And I
Yeah.
think that other people will agree with me that
Yeah.
this would be cool.
And it was one of those things where, again, we're just like, we don't get it. And he's like, no, it'll be cool. Just trust me. And we're like, okay, all right, tell me what you need.
Yeah.
Melissa is not mentioning, like, you know, we were putting together this panel and spreadsheet, like PDFs of artwork.
Yeah.
You ran around wrangling 20 actors to make sure that they
Yeah.
would all be on stage at the same time.
Well, and you gave me great notes on it too, just about runtime, and we got it because the live experience is different. And
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
have said over the years, one of my favorite parts of my job has been developing things with both Kyle and Ryan. And like Kyle and I have done some really cool things together. We did not just the books, we did the Shattered Grid short that you directed. We did Shattered Grid Live, like I helped you cast
The
it.
video
we gave
game.
notes on it. And we did Battle for the Grid
Yeah.
together, which was amazing. So like,
we were in the voiceover booth together, like we were directing those
yeah.
sessions.
He had to like, he was trying to get me to meow and hiss because I was doing Cat Ranger and it was
That was Amanda. That was yeah.
freaking Amanda. But yeah, so it's been fun over the years working with you
Yeah.
and like just developing and creating. It's been like,
And now we
and
we
now
can still do
we
all
have our own
these.
series together. So
we'll talk about all of that, I promise.
The true legacy of Power Rangers.
No, I provide snacks, basically, in informative sports. But is the Shattered Grid Live still on YouTube?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So if you haven't seen
And
it, you can go check it out. It's
If it
really
ever
good.
goes down, I'll put it back up.
You know what? Honestly, there's a version of it. Michael actually put together a version from the live stream.
it's on my YouTube.
that has all of the artwork integrated into it, and it's been out there long enough and on Melissa's live stream that
Maybe we put the full version
maybe
up.
we put the full version
Yeah,
up.
all right.
So after I left Hasbro, for Power Rangers a Day,
Oh, yeah.
we did an anniversary stream of that, and we actually had Kyle and Michael.
That's where we first announced. We didn't say what it was, but we first announced Radiant Black. We showed I showed the Radiant Black artwork.
You guys should
costume.
look it up on
Yeah.
YouTube. It's really
It's a fun
and
time
we, like,
capsule.
yeah, we talk about everything. I think Ryan, you call in at one point.
Probably.
Yeah, and it was a really fun time.
So that was, Kyle, your last time on the book.
Yep.
Ryan, did you ever think about not taking over the books when it was offered to you?
Yes. Yes, I did. I actually was like, I don't want to follow in his footsteps. Like it's like, because I remember when we were talking about Shattered Grid, you were like, all right, well, good, I'm done. This is my mic drop, and I was like,
Well,
man,
I
I don't know,
left-
I don't envy who's coming after you. And
I
then was like,
left
oh
you-
crap, it's me.
I left you guys some stuff. I left you guys but that was what was so exciting is like Daphne asked Marguerite, who I've known forever, and we both had done DC stuff, and then Ryan coming in after that, like, what for you, like when you what did you change anything? Did you change how you approached the book?
Yeah, 100%.
From Go-Go
Yeah.
to Mighty Morphin?
I thought I was just gonna do Go-Go. I thought I was just
Yeah.
gonna keep doing Go-Go, but when you when you left, it was just like, okay, well, do you want to take over and try something new? And I was like, okay. And I remember going back to reading your first issue over again and being like, okay, what was the way in? And you were like, started with the Green Ranger, and I was like, okay, well, if you're started with the Green Ranger, I should start with the White Ranger, and just sort of did it that way. And then when you take over the main book, there's an expectation of a different style of storytelling. Go-Go was designed to be, 70% high school, 30% action, so it was more, you have to aim for larger stories, you have to aim for larger stakes, you have to build the lore and spill it out in different ways. And so, and then a lot of the stuff, like the Omega Rangers came from conversations we had during Shattered Grid, because you always come up with what you want to do next when you're on deadline for the thing that's due. It's like, we should really work on this page, right? Yeah, you hate me now for that. But like, we're working on this, and we'll be sitting there and be like, man, but wouldn't the next thing be way cooler?
Yeah, I remember like we got very excited by the idea of I pitched it as like Power Rangers X-Force, because the idea that one of the tricky things with Shattered Grid was even in that meeting when we finally by the end we approved, everything was approved, like we were going to do it, it was with the caveat that the toys have to go back in the toy box at the end. To Saban's credit though, like as we got into it more and more, increasingly everyone was like, hey, no, we've really got something here. How do we make sure that this sticks in a way where everything resonates and still matters? And so
it doesn't feel like, the Dallas moment where it's in the shower and it's all a dream.
right. And so my idea was, okay, well, Marguerite's going to do 9 issues, so why don't I push off, the Promethea and stuff and get them outside of existence, basically, and that's your Battlestar Galactica, for Power Rangers, and they're trying to make their way home, and it gives you the time to then figure out everything kind of going forward. And so the idea of, well, Trini, Zach, and Jason leaving the team, but also the show when it happened, and actually contextualizing in a way that is both additive to the mythos, opens a new door for what those Rangers could do and become on the cosmic side, and also makes Shattered Grid matter because they're the only ones who remember. That was I think ultimately such a beautiful fusion of what the concepts and where you took everything.
And for me, it was great because up to that point, you'd like writing in line with the show, but man, when you can write characters that you don't know where they're gonna go, that's even better.
Yeah,
It's just it's freeing. Yeah.
And credit to Marguerite too, because her run on Beyond the Grid, I think it was completely stellar for the deep mythos that we still use with the Morphin Grid and the Morphin Masters and how the Morphin Grid works. Like all of that came from Marguerite's run and the stuff that that she put together in that beautiful story. Like I love the Solar Rangers. It was just so much fun.
And what a beautiful legacy on the art side as well.
Yeah.
Like even from the get-go, Hendry with Matt Herms was doing something different. Especially Matt's colors are massively underrated. He's bringing that cell-shaded look to a superhero book. that you now see permeating the entire industry. You know, Dan Mora is redesigning DC Comics on a
Yep.
daily basis,
True.
right? Eleonora is doing great work at Marvel. Daniele De Nicolo is doing stuff with us on Radiant Black and Superman. We just announced him yesterday. He's doing Supermassive 2 in 2023 with us. But Seven Secrets and Power Rangers and it's like such a, you know, these books very much
changed the landscape.
changed the landscape
Yeah.
in superhero comics.
Melissa,
Yes.
you are coming up next. You're about to take the books over.
Yeah.
I don't want to get you in trouble,
Do it.
but also
Yeah,
no,
come on.
I don't think
Come on.
anyone's in here.
We're all
who-
friends
Yeah,
here. You guys aren't going to
there's-
say anything.
There's
Yeah.
a camera. I won't get you in trouble.
He and I are done. So
Yeah, we got
yeah,
nothing to
come
lose.
on, Melissa. Yeah, let's get you in trouble.
What can you say about what's coming up?
I can say that I'm terrified. No, it was funny because when it was announced, I knew that I was coming on the book before Matt and Ryan announced their last issues, because obviously this stuff is planned out in advance. And I remember seeing the reactions and reading them and completely agreeing with them when they're like, "Man, whoever comes up next has some big shoes to fill." And I was like, "Ah, crap, that's me, and my shoes are tiny." Honestly, it's a blessing, and I'm very humbled and excited to be on this side of the room, being the one that's getting notes instead of giving them. There's so much freedom in like knowing that you can always be told no, but you have to just ask. What I will say is, you know, I have been there since the very beginning. I've been there for Kyle's books and for Ryan's books. I've read every single one. I was in a lot of the development for all of them, so they kind of feel, and they're not, they kind of feel like my own in terms of how much I love them. So I'm definitely not looking to do anything that feels incredibly different to what they're doing. I want to honor everything that they've done. But what I feel that they've done and what I love about it is that it feels to me like it's been building for something very special and very new. And the great thing about having both working on the Massiverse with these guys and being friends with them is that I can tell them what I'm thinking about doing, and they can tell me whether or not it sucks. And thankfully, so far, everybody has says it's okay so far.
Melissa pitched it. You pitched it to me last night in line.
I just realized we did it in line for ice cream.
In line for ice
heard us,
cream.
and that was a terrible decision.
It was great.
You guys are all in line for ice cream with us, right? So you guys already heard the whole thing. No, okay. Yeah.
Honestly, it was great. It's an awesome. I think it's an awesome continuation and where you're looking to take things. I think very cool.
Yeah. What I will say is, again, I'm not trying to. I don't want to erase anything that's been done. I want to take it to the next step, what I think is the next logical story step. I'm going to be doing a lot of callbacks and homages to what these guys have done, because I just love, like, there's little things. Even I was rereading the series to be prepped for my run. I was like, oh yeah, what happened here? And I remember texting them being like, did you ever have a thing that you were going to do with this or with that? And I'm like, oh, well, here's an opportunity to do something with it. So there's a lot of like fun, what Daphne calls hanging chads, that I'm using to kind of pull together and set up for what I hope is going to be a very cool next stage of Power Rangers.
I can't believe I'm going to tell this. But so somebody tweeted at me like, "Hey, is this thing ever gonna?" Don't go look this up because you'll figure it out. But somebody who tweeted at me, "Hey, are you gonna ever pay off this thing?" After it was nuts, I was leaving, and I was like, "Oh, shoot." So I texted Daphne. I was like, "Hey, is Melissa gonna handle this thing that I did not ever come up with and have to answer for?" And she's like, "She's got it." I was like, "Great." So like, thank you for whoever tweeted at me and reminded me about the thing that I just never paid off.
Yeah. That said, they did tell me I could do whatever I wanted within reason, and Hasbro has said yes to everything. So expect some.
You're
crazy
taking some
things.
big swings.
Yeah, expect some crazy things. You may love them, you may hate them, but I am really excited, and I'm gonna get in trouble, but I'm gonna say it anyway.
Okay.
Dan Mora is doing these designs for some of these new elements.
God bless
Freaking like amazing.
I don't know
They're so
who
cool.
you'd get in trouble with. You're not there anymore.
I know, but I still work for them.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
They're still paying me.
I don't know
wanna
what you're
keep
gonna.
working for them.
I don't know what you're gonna do considering I kill everybody in 100. So I don't know what the next gonna.
By the way, I did. Are you going to ask about 100? Because I read it and I cried.
I also cried in a hotel
Yeah.
in
How have I
Pasadena.
not read it?
What?
I haven't read it.
You haven't read it?
No.
Well, okay.
I'll send it
you
to
read
you.
it later.
All right. You'll send it to me?
Yeah.
We're
It's-
all gonna read
it's
it. No, I'm
very
kidding.
no, that would get me in trouble for sure. before we get to that, you guys are also you've all worked together for 6 years across Power Rangers. You are also now working together on a separate thing. For anyone in the audience who might not know, what is the Massive Verse?
So, how many people here have heard of Radiant Black? Yeah. Rogue Sun, Inferno Girl Red, The Dead Lucky. Yeah. So the Massiveverse is a new creator-owned superhero universe that is a part of the Image Comics superhero universe, and it's made up of all of us. So those of us who, it just has kind of worked out this way, to be honest, but those of us who worked together on Power Rangers for so many years, we now run our own superhero universe that is very, very tokusatsu inspired aesthetically, for sure. But it's also, in the case of Radiant Black, it's been dubbed kind of a superhero series for a new generation. We take really dynamic, risky, narrative swings. So we do things where, for example, all the superpowers come from miniature black holes, and so we did an issue that takes place entirely inside a black hole. And we did it all with fluorescent Pantone ink, so the whole book is a blacklight comic. It's like a blacklight experience, and that's part of the storytelling. And so we sign the books in UV ink, and we have secret QR codes that go to like full animated short films with Will Friedle voicing Radiant Black. And so we're really trying to both tell a new age, dynamic world outside your window superhero reinvention, while also celebrating being a fan of superheroes. And so the second book out of the line, Rogue Sun by Ryan and Abel, and I think you
It's incredible.
Yeah.
No, just not to pitch it again, but like there's some I want to bring this up. Somebody came up to my booth yesterday and was like, "You know what I really like about the Massiverse? It's like it feels like you guys as writers, like Kyle did Power Rangers and sort of started, and then you took over, and Melissa, and everybody kind of came in after him and sort of like learned, and you guys are all sort of like building a team of writers." He's like, and it's kind of the same way the books work, as like you have these team of heroes are all sort of figuring themselves out. It's like the two kind of like mirror one another, and I was like, I never thought of that, but that's actually exactly what we're doing. Like one of the things that I've said that's really, really great about the Massiverse for us is that before, if you wanted to do a superhero comic book at Image, you had to have written Batman or X-Men or the Fantastic Four or something. They're not going to let you do that. But because of the fact that we did this together, and because you smashed through the door and created Radiant Black, and then let us all kind of come along, we're getting an opportunity. There's no way I should be able to get to make a superhero book at Image right now. I've never even written for Marvel.
Same. Like the fact that my first ever comic book is an Image superhero book is insane.
It flips the script a little bit.
Wouldn't happen without Kyle.
And I really like, and that's, I think, is a very cool and I think it's taught me the one thing that I've really enjoyed about this so much is the fact that, and you've said this several times, is that I couldn't do this alone. I don't know how how other creators just do like one book at Image by themselves. Like I could not do this without everybody here. Literally the book would never come out. I would never get done. Michael knows for sure, and it would never come out. So having the support structure of our friends to be able to do it, it feels like those days when we were just hanging out in coffee shops talking about stuff, but we just get to do it, and they're just real now, as opposed to you get done with coffee, you're like, all right, let's go watch Batman.
It's all of the same kind of creative energy and excitement from doing the Power Ranger stuff together, but on this stuff we own it and control it, and which means we can take it in any direction we want to take it in, and so it stays fresh and relevant for us. But I talk a lot about how like my favorite part of making comics is the collaboration. And I say this coming from screenwriting, but really directing. And writing is horrible usually because it's so lonely and isolated, and screenwriting especially. But in comics, you're constantly working and communicating with both an editor, with your artists, with designers. The best part of it, though, is making comics with my friends. Yeah. And so this has been this really fantastic kind of opportunity to take something that I think was very refreshing in the market when Power Rangers launched and has continued to do as well as it's done, and kind of then go and continue on in our own way. Has been really special. What's the saying about Power Rangers being better together? Right?
Being better. They always also say Power Rangers is being superheroes with your friends. That's the best part of it.
There you go.
But I mean, what I will say is, I am so grateful for the opportunity, and it kind of feels like it does feel hand to hand and almost symbiotic for me, because I wouldn't have gotten Power Ranger, I wouldn't have gotten the Dead Lucky, and I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to work with Kyle had it not been for Power Rangers. But I also wouldn't have been able to write on Power Rangers without the Dead Lucky, because without Kyle giving me that chance and me being able to have this book that I could send to Daphne and say, hey, here's my book, and have her be like, oh, she can write, would you like to write on here? I would not have had either experience without the other, and I'm so grateful and humbled, because now such a big part of my life is getting to work with these guys, and I genuinely love them. They were literally my favorite thing about working with Power Rangers, so being able to do it again, it's very cool.
Let's take some questions.
Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah.
Let's take some questions.
Yeah,
More fun that
so
way.
there's a microphone over to that side.
I
if you
think it
guys
works
wanna
this
just
time.
line up. I think it does. If we could get the lights a little bit more in the crowd so we can see who's in the line.
Hey,
Absolutely.
you guys look like very mysterious shadows, and it's kind of scary.
Always love when there's cosplay person in the middle who's like, okay, there's 5 people, and then Draken's going to ask a question.
Hi.
Hello, thank you for all your great work. Love your books. You guys have created so many cool new characters and Ranger versions, like Omega Rangers, Pink Slayer, all that kind of stuff. And I know I've seen the Shattered Grid short film. Is there been any more talk about possibly bringing the new stuff, the characters that you guys have created, into the quote-unquote canon live-action Power Rangers world? Has Hasbro approached you folks and said, "Hey, we want to use this stuff"? Because I know it's in a lot of them are in the games already. So what about live action? Is it still any more chances of that stuff?
I mean,
coming through?
that's honestly up to Hasbro, and I don't work for them anymore. But what I will say is that even when I was on the brand, and what I know now is that they are very excited and supportive of the books and what they continue to bring. And I think showing that they show that in merch and they want to support it in that way. I think it's difficult, and this is just me not knowing anything about anything. Just speculative. It's difficult to try and do something on like the kids' TV show, because it films so far in advance that being able to put things, there are two different schedules that run differently. And Power Rangers TV series has its own canon that is already difficult enough because they're adapting to the Sentai footage. Now, for the future, no idea. And I personally, if I were there, I'd be looking for that opportunity. I would be shocked if that was not the case. But that's really up to Hasbro. But I mean, considering how much they've backed the books and how cool everything they've done is, and how you see all the stuff coming out at merch, I'm sure it's only a matter of time, honestly. But I have no confirmation either way.
I'm holding out hope that they will take Zed's origin story and make it real. That's my hope. I'm like, come on, give me a bone here. Yeah.
There was I won't speak too out of school, but there was a brief period where after the Shattered Grid promo short that we had done, and with everything going on with the Coinless universe, that we actually, again, this was actually another Matt, Michael, Ryan, and my kind of special. We were building out a live action kind of take and designing it as an over-the-top series, where a number of the actors would have potentially been viable to play these characters that are now the right age in the comics from the Draken. But obviously with Hasbro, with all of that and their own plans, like that one didn't make it through ultimately when the sale happened. But again, it's the spirit of that stuff and the excitement, which now we're trying to port over in our own ways on the stuff that are ours.
On Massiverse, we don't have to wait for Hasbro.
Yeah, exactly.
Still hoping Shattered Grid Live happens. Thank you.
Wouldn't that be great? Yeah. Here, come up and grab some comics. We've got stuff for everyone with a question. Issue 16 and 17 are Radiant Black. Yep. Sorry, I don't have any Power Ranger comics, unfortunately.
Kind of along the same lines, to me, the best parts of the Boom comics, obviously Mighty Morphin's great, but everything that has expanded the lore or just gone in kind of a different direction, like the Solar Rangers. Mm-hmm. Were there any concepts that didn't get used or you decided to scrap that there's no way they're coming back as of right now that you can kind of speak on as concepts?
I've got one. I do have one.
Do you?
Yeah. And I think I got to check with Michael real quick, but I'm pretty sure that a story came out that means that this can never happen.
Hold on.
Gotcha. Okay.
In the meantime, I can tell you one. We did a Justice League Power Rangers crossover, and a pink Batman Power Ranger was pitched.
Oh, yeah.
But ultimately was not approved.
I
Still
heard
lives in
that
our
story.
hearts.
I heard that story from the DC
Not from us,
side.
by the way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
DC did it.
Yep.
But we were all for it.
Okay.
Shockingly, right? But yeah.
Okay. So here was an idea.
I forgot about this.
Yeah. So at one point, when I'm doing Shattered Grid, the problem becomes of schedule. How do you do a story after or pitch the next series of stories when you're in the midst of running this multi-era, multi-book, multi-creator kind of event, right? And so, but one of the ideas that I had toyed around with was when you remake the universe, what happens to those that are remade? And I had this thought about the origin for the Phantom Ranger.
Yeah.
And so my take was that the Phantom Ranger is actually Alex from Time Force, who's remade. And he's now been remade twice. He was remade, he was brought back as a result of events in Time Force, right, after he died. It was never really explained, but he was never quite right after that. And after Shattered Grid, he's been remade and he remembers. And so now he is going back and he's looking to try to prevent another Shattered Grid from ever happening again, but he can't reveal who he is or show anyone as a result of being from the time traveler. And that was going to be my way of building out, some of that stuff. But it can't happen now. In a good, so like I love what I heard they did. But so I feel like I can share that.
Yeah. At the time, we had other plans for the Phantom Ranger, so it was us. We were the bad guys. We said no.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Come get some.
Just
come past on your way after you ask a
Radiant
question.
Red or Radiant Black? Radiant Red, 4 and 5
Great pick.
variants.
Hi. I just wanted to start by thanking all of you for the last 6 years because, like, Melissa, your work with the visual history book for Power Rangers. Kyle and Ryan, thank you so much for the comic books that you guys have worked on. I've been a fan of Power Rangers since I was little, but I never really felt legitimized by the brand as like an older fan until these books came out, because all of the ingredients for Power Rangers always seemed to be there, but they never really fit together in the perfect way that they needed to in order for it to appeal to an older audience. And I felt like the Boom Studios stuff really kind of put all of that together in a way that all of us were looking for and waiting for. So I really have to thank you guys for that and validating us as fans, because it really did feel like exactly what we all wanted out of the brand.
The books wouldn't exist without you guys buying them.
Yeah.
So thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and my question, I guess, for all of you, the 30th anniversary is coming up for the franchise, and Hasbro has been very, very quiet about any sort of plans related to the future. So separating your work with Boom, separating yourselves from anything that you know, if it's anything, what would you like to see? Like, what is the stuff that they are leaving on the table that is easy money that you think they should really like focus on in order to get fans really excited for the brand going forward?
I mean, I would love to see a wholly original Power Ranger team that is not based on
Hyperforce.
Yeah, there you go. Like, I would love to see whether it's something like Hyperforce as the vehicle as well, or a wholly original team that is mentored by some elder
Some old
rangers.
folks. Yep.
And the idea of like learning to be a Power Ranger by going through or going on different kind of adventures or cases or whatever, and you have a different elder ranger kind of involved. Like, it's a way of passing the torch to something brand new while still having connective tissue to what has come before. But like, I'd love to see it, and this is the director in me, like, I would love to see, there's shows look so good these days, and I would love to see it as good as Power Rangers looks now. I'd love to see it level up one step further. And that would be, and again, things, tone and mythos, like I think, anyway, I'll ramble, but.
Yeah, I think, sorry, can I go real quick?
Yes.
There's I think there's some actors who have come back to the show a bunch of times, and those guys are great, and everybody loves them for very good reason. I think there's also a great selection of people who have kind of never come back or like came back for one team up after their thing. Like folks like Erin Cahill, for instance, who are like great and could do great work on the show. And I think like if I was casting, bringing some people back, I would be looking at faces who haven't been back on the show.
I'm not going to do better than that.
Thank you. Come and grab
Ryan
some
wants to
comics.
see Dane on the show. That's actually
Dane and Yale, right?
yeah.
Yeah, actually, open world VR Megazord driving game for Quest. That's what I want.
That would be awesome.
That would also be very cool.
Yeah.
Thank
You can
you.
grab some comics. Radiant Black, 16 and 17.
Hello.
Hey.
When making Shattered Grid, you had a lot of interactions of Ragers across the years,
Yeah.
like during the battle itself and what you've done with Beyond the Grid. What kind of thought processes went into highlighting certain characters that would best to be playing off each other?
That's a great question. So one of the things I believed in when I started Shattered Grid and then really kind of put to the test in writing it was that in building it was that a lot of events are really just they're made up of moments, and what people want to see, at least what I want to see when I watch it like a Power Rangers team up special like they used to do in between seasons. What's the one, Michael, that is it is it Wild Force?
Forever
With-
Red?
It's not Forever Red,
Is it the
no.
one where they
I just
team
need-
up with Time Force people? The Wild Force and Time Force?
It might be that one.
Reinforcements for the future.
I think it's that one, Reinforcements from the Future. The pairings, the unlikely pairings.
That's
Yeah.
the one.
That's what those are for. That's what an event is for. Like, I want to see who. So for me, it became who am I most interested in seeing together, and a lot of that comes out of I'm a big believer in trying to take full advantage of a concept. So where do I get my most interesting angles within this concept that fully allows me to explore it and showcase what's interesting about it through the characters and the pairings that I'm choosing. So for example, I figured out based on the timeline, remember, things can break at different points based on the grid. So I wanted to have Corone in the series before or after she goes, after they save her from being Andromeda. But I wanted Andros to be in the book from before he has saved her. So when Corone meets Andros and he sees that this is his sister and she is now the Pink Ranger, and Corone says to him, "You did it," like that's a moment that can only exist as a result of the conceit of the event, Shattered Grid. So stuff like that. Kimberly and Jen Scott's talking about loss was another personal favorite of mine. And then my favorite though was getting to do a Zordon and Rita sequence together, and then ultimately a team.
For Beyond the Grid, Marguerite was incredibly flexible. She gave us a list of Rangers that she wanted to use, and then basically said, "Are there any you'd rather I use instead?" And we had opinions. Like we really wanted Heckle as the Dark Ranger. I think that was Jason Bischoff's personal mission, was to bring the Dark Ranger on the show. We wanted people like Tanya and that sort of thing. And so we worked together on the list, the lineup for Beyond the Grid. And I think it came out really well.
I also do remember sending you an email of like, hey, here's all the Power Rangers with hammers, just in case that would be useful.
did,
for you.
yes.
Yeah.
Grab some
Thanks very much.
Radiant Black variants.
Hello, y'all.
Yeah.
So y'all did a wonderful job introducing some of the pre-Mighty Morphin teams into the comics. Was there any consideration through your times in the comic adding any of the Sentai characters into the comics?
I think that's a complicated
It's a rights issue.
rights
Like,
issue,
I don't
yeah.
think we'd be able to do that, unfortunately. It's the same reason why they weren't able to use any movie characters. Like, we tried with Ivan Ooze so many times, and it's just...
I've suggested
gonna happen,
Ivan
guys,
Ooze, I
sorry.
think once
Yeah,
every 3 months to
I mean,
one of you.
They might have changed since then, but, like, at the time, Fox had the rights, and we didn't have it, so...
I get pitched Ivan Ooze at my every booth 5 times, and I'm like, sorry guys, it's a rights thing. It'll never happen.
I've suggested once that what if you just did like Sam Slime instead, and he was just a completely legally distinct character,
Can you say that?
but that no one ever goes for it for some reason.
Okay, thank you.
Yep,
Thank
here,
you.
grab some comics.
Guys, we're running low on time, so we might take one or two
Radiant
more.
Black 16.
Everybody
Sorry, guys.
else in line, though, these guys are all, you've got booths. Can you say where you are?
We're in 416 and 418.
And Melissa,
And
you're
I'm
over
at
in-
610.
So-
Selling merch too, so if you want some cool merch, we have it.
So if we don't get to your question, please come by and chat with these guys this afternoon.
All right, my question is basically, do you guys talk to the actors at all about the direction you guys are going to? And then more specifically with Ryan, with Gogo, who would you cast as Matt?
That's funny. First answer is not. It happened one time with Steve. Stephen.
Cardenas.
Yeah, Cardenas. Sorry, I'm blanking his last name. We were on a just a regular like podcast, and he mentioned that during when he first got cast in the role, they gave him like a sheet about his entire family, and like he had like 6 or 7 brothers and sisters, and like what it was like in his home life, and it never found its way into the show. And so I called him after that and was like, "Can we talk about anything you remember from that?" And he told me some stuff, and we tried to work that into the book, which I really loved. And then somebody asked me this, and I was like, "Freddie Prinze Jr."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
I never pitched or told, where stuff was really going, but there were little bits that I would, get to know someone, and then it does inform the voice a little bit. And so there were little bits and little things, and hear different stories from different points of view from different actors, and that was always interesting. And so sometimes that would inform little things you wouldn't expect, but it's a little flavor that I would find that never
Yeah, same. I have, even for Hyperforce, it was actors that I had relationships with that I knew would be good at what they were doing or things that were inspiring. And for the books themselves that I constantly think of when it comes to characters.
So you didn't shoot JDF like a text like, "Hey, I killed you," like.
JDF. I've worked with JDF a lot, and he definitely is. He was Draken on Hyperforce. Like he personified that character incredibly.
Yeah, no, he and I would talk a lot then. I gave him a heads up when I was killing him.
Hi guys.
Thank you. Hi.
Thank you for bringing this universe to us with more content and all that. My question is like, how much freedom did you have to like go back in time 10,000 years and have origin for Zordon, Lord Zed, give us Eltar and all that?
It's funny because
I know what you're gonna say.
now that it's different, like I'm jealous sometimes when Ryan tells me what he's doing, because there were things that in the early days, understandably, you're still figuring out if this is going to work, how much exposure you want to give to something in a comic, or latitude in a comic. And so there were things like, doing anything with Eltar was that would have been a tough conversation, I think, at the stage that I was doing the book, but obviously they've built it out really beautifully now.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends at whatever given time what everybody else is doing. And part of the job of the brand executives, it's kind of a thankless job where you have 1,000 different projects and you have to make sure nobody's stepping on anybody else's toes. And so we wanted to give them as much freedom as possible, but there were also other plans in the works. And so sometimes we just weren't able to go there and to do things which made me sad because I would have loved to see, a take on the Phantom Ranger. They did an amazing job already with their Phantom Ranger take. But, even the origin of Eltar. I think at the time we were pitching a video game series on Eltar. And so that's why we were that one.
Yeah, I didn't tell Kaya for a long time I was doing it because of that. He was like, I'm not allowed to really touch Eltar. And I was like, oh yeah, really? And then I was like, Hasbro, can I do some Eltar? They're like, knock yourself out.
Thank you guys so
Thank
much.
you very much.
pretty
Guys, I'm
black for
afraid it's just hit 1 o'clock, so that is all we have time for. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 100 is out on September 28th. It's out a month from today.
Wow, it's really? Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
It is stunning, and I hope that you all read it. And then, Melissa, your first issue is out the month after that. These guys also have their own books that you should check out, Rogue Sun, Radiant Black, and The Dead Lucky. Thank you all so much for being here. Can I get one last round of applause
Thanks,
for
guys.
Kyle, Ryan, and Melissa? And have a great weekend.